The non-alignment movement as well as Panchsheel. Were these two truly the mistakes or the visionary principles misunderstood by history and historians? So guys, you're watching StudyIQ IS English. My name is Praveen Mishra, and in this session, we are going to just understand the fact, mistakes or masterstroke, Panchsheel as well as NAM. So as you can see, when India gained independence, it was the involvement of Cold War, the tension between the two power blocs, the US and the USSR. The West world was dominated by the US and the East was USSR. And now comes in the principles of our first Prime Minister, that is Jawaharlal Nehru. What you can see here, in the bipolar world, Jawaharlal Nehru chose a third path, simply a vision of independent foreign policy based on some moral leadership, peace, and non-alignment. But as you can see, the decades later, presently in 2025, what our discussion is. Many historians, as well as strategists, argue that Nehru's idealism, particularly through NAM, as well as Panchsheel, were mistakes, and that costed India highly as well as strategically. What's the reality? You might be having an answer in your mind, but stay tuned with the video. At the end of it, we will be having a clear-cut answer, mistake or masterstroke. Let's go ahead with the history, with the basics. Panchsheel specifically was signed exactly as you can see on 29th April 1954 between India and at that time a good friend China, which was officially named as the Agreement on Trade and Intercourse between the Tibetan region of China and India. And the heart of the agreement was the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence that were named as Panchsheel. Specifically, if we talk about what were those 5 principles. So the first one was dealing with the mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Second one, the mutual non-aggression. Third, the mutual non-interference in internal matters of each other. Fourth, equality and mutual benefits. And fifth, the peaceful coexistence. So the facts, starting with the first one. Mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. That means our map is ours, your map is yours. We are not going to intervene in your boundary, you are not going to intervene in mine, vice versa thing. But what happened? Just 8 years later after this agreement, China directly intervened inside Indian boundary, and hence the Panchsheel went just as a sleeping beauty along with the NAM. Second one, the mutual non-aggression. We had a battle, for sure the world knows it, in the year 1962, the Sino-Indian War. Mutual non-interference in internal affairs. China directly interfered in our northeastern region. It was interfering, it is interfering even today. Equality and mutual benefits. Mutual benefits were nowhere seen, but yes, Chinese benefits, they are still evident. And lastly, peaceful coexistence. From Galwan to Aksai Chin, that is the clear representation that China is nowhere in mindset of any kind of peaceful existence. Neither it was in the era of 1950s, neither it is right now. So this has just become a symbol, a type of a statue that is of no use. It is absolutely dormant, as well as hazardous to the whole principles of international relations. Now the next thing, as you can see, the Nehru's vision behind such policy known as Panchsheel. See, one thing we must admit it. Mr. Nehru and his ideas basically, they were far ahead of the time. And that's sometimes beneficial. And so these are the things sometimes very much costly as well. And specifically when it comes to the national level, or basically when it comes to the national interest and sovereignty level. So as you can see what the strategists have argued. So Nehru wanted to build Asian solidarity, free from any kind of Western and Soviet influence. Nehru believed in the principle of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, going ahead with the idea that two ancient civilizations could lead a post-colonial world with all morality, ethics, and integrity within the nations. Finally, Nehru saw Panchsheel as a code of conduct for international relations, promoting trust and mutual respect within the countries. But it terribly failed, as it was our idea, not the world's idea. World was not ready even at that time. World is not even ready at this time. So what actually went wrong? Here is the answer. As you can see, the first thing, China's strategic deceit. China was a dragon in the nest, not a bird. As you can see, even as Panchsheel was being signed, China was consolidating control over the whole Tibet that undermined India's national and international zones. Second, as you can see this part, India under Nehru recognized Tibet as part of China. This was a big mistake that gave India a critical geopolitical disadvantage and China a big level of advantage. Next, border negligence. India relied on moral diplomacy instead of going ahead with military or strategic vigilance, whereas China was going ahead with its hostile intention into the Aksai Chin region, that is basically to the LAC region near the Pangong Tso, as well as the NIFA, that is Northeastern Frontier Agencies, specifically Arunachal Pradesh region. And this was the grave mistake our diplomacy, our government machinery, our international policy mistake, our international policy committed. We shouldn't have relied on the dragon in the nest. This was a big setback to our country. Next comes in the non-alignment movement. We decided that when the World War is over, when Cold War is already going on, are we having the proper resources to entangle ourselves on either of the sides? Well, it's not about resources. It's about, are we having such type of audacity, or are we having such type of international support? This was the question of audacity as well as support. Himmat, audacity, as well as the sahyog, that is support. Will India gain it when India has just thrashed out the British from their own soil? Will this British colonial powers allow India, as well as the other colonial powers, will allow India to gain a platform where India is being represented as one of the major powers, economies, and so on? This was a big concern in front of Nehru as well as the other government machinery. And so hence comes in this existence, that is non-alignment movement. When we talk about the features of origin, so here we go. As you can see, the fact, it was Nehru, Joseph Broz Tito coming from Yugoslavia, Gamal Abdel Nasir coming from Egypt, Sukarno coming from Indonesia, and Kwame Nkrumah coming from Ghana. These were the people, or the countries basically, as you can see, Ghana, Indonesia, Egypt, Yugoslavia, and India. These were all the countries who were nowhere into the list of powers in the era of 1950s. As of now, at least we are. Okay. So what you can see, it was formally founded in Belgrade Conference in the year 1961. And India was one of the founding members as well as major players behind NAM's philosophy. Now, the next big thing that was troubling the whole of the ecosystem was the principles as well as the essence of NAM. The thing, independence in foreign policy. This was the principle. And if you go ahead with the essence, refusal to join any military bloc, including the NATO or the Warsaw Pact. NATO being coming from US, Warsaw Pact from USSR. Second, the principle, peaceful coexistence. Obviously, our philosophy was inspired through Panchsheel. And here we talk about essence, resolution of disputes through diplomacy and not any kind of conflict. The principles again, anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism. But the essence was support for liberation struggles in Asia, Africa, as well as Latin America. And once again, the principle was heavy economic neutrality, that we are not relying on any countries for any kind of economic gains and benefits. And here comes the essence, freedom from dependence on superpowers aid politics, specifically the PL 480 program of America, right? So this is what, as you can see, if I step aside, if you see these two things, they are directly signaling or referring towards the present policy our country is going ahead with. Yes, it's Atmanirbhar policy along with strategic autonomy and digital sovereignty. Right, everyone? So here is the next big thing. Nehru's strategic rationales. Obviously, we have to keep this part in mind always. Nehru was ahead of the time. That was sometimes beneficial as well as costly. So the fact is, India's limited resources couldn't afford any kind of Cold War entanglements. Nehru wanted India to become a moral leader of the global south. That's what we are presenting right now with the phrases Vishwaguru and Vishwamitra. Next, Nehru believed neutrality would keep India's options open and avoid any kind of provocations from either of superpowers. This was a mistake. There was a big need for India to rely on, or basically to tilt on, not rely, sorry, but to tilt on either of the sides in order to grow and develop. Those superpowers were needed at the time. And next comes in the final part. His aim, Nehru's aim, was not any kind of isolation as many of the strategists and historians have argued, but active non-alignment. Simply speaking, playing a constructive global role. The fact is, Nehru's over-enthusiasm was represented here. Over-enthusiasm was represented here. Simply, if we say in a very simple term, a country which was considered as Sone ki chidiya, the golden bird. The wings of that golden bird were cut down by this British imperial loot, obviously. And this British imperial loot compelled India in the 1940s and 50s era to tilt on either of the side. But Nehru, with all of his nationalist and capitalist mindsets, was literally not ready. It was the positive side of the Nehru, for sure, no doubt in that, but it was also the over-enthusiasm that costed us a bit at that time. This is my personal opinion. And now let's talk about the achievements of NAM. Yes, it gave us some achievements, like the first thing, moral legitimacy, along with diplomatic autonomy as well as the global leadership. But it failed terribly with the passage of time. And now let's talk about, were these really the mistakes or the masterstroke? Well, for which we have got three different opinions. The first opinion is coming from the lens of strategy. So as you can see, the realistic or the strategic lens. Yes, from the lens of strategy and realism, it was a grave mistake as the history suggests. Why? As you can see the part here, Nehru underestimated China's expansionist ambitions and overestimated Asian solidarity. We trusted a lot. That was our soft side, which was snapped, which was stabbed, which was choked by these hostile Chinese. Next, recognizing Tibet as part of China, it reduced India's strategic depth. And finally, the biggest concern, that was the biggest loophole of the principles. NAM lacked any kind of deterrent value. It didn't secure allies when India needed them the most. We were never given support, neither from Yugoslavia, neither from Egypt. Neither of the countries came in front when we needed the support, specifically during the Sino-Indian War as well as the Indo-Pakistan War. And next comes in the last one. In a realist world, power matters more than principles. You must understand this. And Nehru's diplomacy didn't account for that fully. Nehru was someone who was believer of friendship, kinship, softness, not of deterrence. But this is what idealism is. Realism is this line, as you can see. This is the very perfect line. Power matters. In realistic world, power matters more than the principles. Your principles will be always accepted, whether they are right or wrong, in case you have power. And now let's talk about from the moral lens. Here, Nehru was bit different in the approach, or strategists were also bit different in the approach. As you can see, through the moral lens, they were not the mistakes They were the master strokes. How? Just going ahead with the representation of India's cultural aesthetics. What is represented here? Both policies represented India's civilizational ethos, focusing on peace as well as independence and non aggression. That is still India's punchline in the global forums. Secondly, NAM allowed India to retain policy autonomy, which is presently our biggest, what we say, emphasis or impetus, while others became satellites of either the US or the USSR. And Panchsheel became a universal diplomatic principle influencing UN resolutions as well as the Afro-Asian solidarity. Africa and Asia, they got hugely connected with regard to the international relations and global policies. And so the credit goes to the very strong link or the very strong chain that was inspired through the elements of Panchsheel. So what should be the correct answer? Masterstroke or a mistake? This one will provide the correct answer. Let me give you the answer. First of all, it was a masterstroke, and history is never wrong. History tells us powerful people comes from powerful places. History was wrong. Powerful people makes places powerful. Very cheap movie lines, right? Let's make it worthy. Powerful people makes places workful. And this workful thing makes places worthful. And so Nehru's power was of work. And this work of Nehru made India's worth in the global stages. Right? So what we can see from the historical evolution lens. No doubt Nehru's ideas were once again ahead of their time. But his implementation lacked bit pragmatism. A bit of. Secondly, Panchsheel was noble principle applied to an unreliable partner, that is China. And this was the mistake. And finally, NAM was visionary. But in a world defined by hard alliances, we failed to secure our own security. Thus, philosophy wasn't wrong. Remember, the timing and the trust perhaps was the biggest issue. So remember guys, it was a masterstroke. The only thing is, you were driving a Ferrari in a road full of holes and loops. That's the only mistake. Think of Nehru being present in the present ages. And think of NAM and Panchsheel in 2025. It's going to thrash every countries from the names US, China, France, England, blah, 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 blah. It's just the timing that was not suitable for a country like ours, which just gained independence in the tension era, basically in the Cold War era. So guys, I hope you have got the answer and thank you so much for watching. But remember, if you're a serious UPSC CSE aspirant eyeing for 2026 year of examination, so our FastTrack GS Foundation English batches are going to commence from 17th of October. So guys, remember, English, yes. Hindi, yes. Bilingual, that is Hindi plus English, yes. They are all available if you are someone targeting, once again, the examination year of 2026. Please guys, enroll yourself at the earliest using the promo code PRV Live in order to enjoy the maximum discount. And if you have any issue, please call on the helpline number. As you can see, it's scrolling down your screens. Thank you so much guys for watching once again, and see you soon from 17th of October in our fast track batches of 2026. And before you leave, please do hit the subscribe button of our channel, StudyIQ IS English, a channel dedicated with just one agenda, to provide you all the quality and quantity of the content. And in case you wish to connect with me for all the class links, PDFs, notes and quizzes, as well as the PYQ discussion, here is the Telegram channel QR code that is named as Praveen_StudyIQ. And further, you can also join me on my Instagram, that is with the username Praveen_Mishra_2107. But guys, before you leave, please hit the subscribe button and never miss an update from the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Please do let us know your opinion into the comment section. See you soon. Bye-bye. Good day. Take care. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.